I'm Lucia Lee. I'm an educator and creative writer.
And I'm JT Neal. I'm an organizer, writer, poli-sci nerd, and just a general geek. And you're listening to What's Wrong, Baltimore?
Our podcast where we talk about Baltimore,
the issues that affect the people who live in it,
and the implications they carry to all American cities.
Welcome. Hope you're ready to sit back and do some listening, because we're going to do some talking. Why can't my government, which is an extension of my will, not also feed my neighbors? But people don't think like that so much anymore, not in mass. And as soon as we do, then it won't be a situation of the Mexicans are coming and taking my jobs. It's why do businesses think that they can take advantage of people who are just showing up? Why are they paying them pennies on the dollar? They should be treating everybody the same way that I'm supposed to be treated. And as soon as that happens, you won't see people taking up other people's jobs because it won't be a matter of I can take advantage of them or not. Right? And then it's not us fighting for scraps. It's we're all supposed to be getting something out of this. So why is it that we're not? Right? Why is your government not taking care of your needs? It's yours. You own it. You are a citizen of the city of Baltimore. You pay taxes to Baltimore. It's your money. Why is it not feeding you? Why is it not taking care of your needs? Why is there ever a question of, well, we got a bunch of, refugees and immigrants, so I guess that means no new school books, no new school buildings.
That's been kind of the issue with adjustments in education budgets. There is redistributing of funds to schools that are in more need and are under-resourced, which means that there's money being taken away from schools that are, have stellar test scores or whatever from higher income neighborhoods. So that breeds that mentality of like, why should I have to have less for people who can't even do their own homework?
Yeah.
But the question isn't so much like, why should I give up? It's like, why can't the government take care of these needs?
And it's
without
zero
having
sum.
to like do whatever this is,
Yeah. It's like zero sum. Yeah.
It's pitting people against each other.
Exactly. Like anytime the elitists are complaining, Joe Biden is trying to forgive their student loan debt. Wouldn't you want a potential doctor or a potential lawyer or somebody helping you with your taxes? Wouldn't you like it if they were passionate about what they did and they didn't have the stress of debt to distract them? Wouldn't you want your heart surgeon to be more concerned about you getting healthy than they are about being like, I got to pay off this debt? Wouldn't you want your anything, your plumber, your mechanic, your electrician, to be capable of doing their job for the passion of it and not for, if I don't make $1, I'm going to die? Because then they won't try to push you into something you don't need or you don't want. The subtle pressure of the market means that they work in your best interest. And in the same way, the more educated area has less crime, right? Families are stable. Students aren't doing anything delinquent. They're not agitated and they're not agitating. When I take money from the rich part of town to educate the students in the poor part of town, I'm lowering the volume of crime. I'm lowering the volume of strife, which then makes it easier for you to exist. You can go more places. You can do more things. Everything is nicer. It's not a zero sum. It's not if I don't have this dollar, somebody else does. It's we have needs. The most selfish thing you can do in the world is to help somebody else, to take care of someone else, because then they can take care of you. Being kind and helpful to others is deeply selfish, because all of the people who take care of others, what happens when they have needs? A ton of people show up to take care of them. We have this notion that it's unnecessary to care about others, that it is a fluke of circumstance and not just the natural state of being. If you meet a bunch of 5-year-olds, they'll help you. They can't do anything because they're 5. They can't really, they're not good at really anything. They fall over. They're not even really good at walking, but they, they instinctively try to help you
Yeah.
and they instinctively want to help you. And I'm like, that's what human beings do. We want to help each other, but we learn that doing it in a macro scale is somehow I'm losing out, right? If I'm rich and like I get taxed and it goes to help people, I lose. It's like, no, dude, there
Mm,
are now more people to buy more things from your business. You get richer,
right. And
right?
I think part of it is also like you said there were millions, billions, millions of dollars being funneled into the Salvadoran government
It
to
was a
support
million
the
bucks a day.
military.
In
Me-
total, it adjusted for inflation, it was about $6 billion, and at one point, it was literally $1 million a day was going into the Salvadorian government's bank account from the U.S.
Right.
government to buy military weapons and to do all of this stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, so I guess, why can't that money come to the cities and to social services and to education? And, ultimately it was American tax dollars being funneled into the Salvadoran government military.
Mm-hmm.
So our money created the conditions that made people escape to our cities.
Literally.
Um, And if we had money enough to do that, we have money enough to provide basic services.
Yeah.
It shouldn't
Yeah.
have gone that way to begin with, but it did, and we need to be accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and I understand that there is definitely like, what does this have to do with me? Why me? Why am I the one paying for things that these people have nothing to do with me? I get the desire to distance yourself, but I also think that there are really tangible, like really noticeable benefits to being welcoming, to being supportive and having that kind of community. I broke my foot and I was screaming out on the floor, and my neighbor came over to see if I needed anything, and even drove me to the emergency room because I can't drive with a broken foot. And to be to have that kind of support within your community where if something's wrong, people can, something as small as driving 5 minutes to their emergency room, it it makes me feel safe.
Yeah.
And I have that guy's back too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we are ultimately denying, this like ability to have community when we distance ourselves from newcomers. It is definitely a sentiment that I see though, like very much so. This like foreignness, this setting yourself apart from them kind of thing. I have teacher friends who talk about having mixed classes of ESOL students and just kind of remedial reading in a high school, and so there's often like a race tension that occurs among Black students and immigrant, like Spanish speaking students, that
Mm.
the Black students start mimicking the same rhetoric of being anti immigrant,
Yeah.
which is really interesting too, because those are the words that are being spread widely enough that kids who would otherwise struggle with reading, kids who would otherwise not really watch the news, at least know that.
Yeah.
And that's weird that that has that kind of power to spread among kids who struggle to read.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I think I wanted to bring up was so there was this news story on CBS. The headline reads, South American theft group members suspected of burglaries in Maryland and other states. This was updated on March 13th. So basically, Baltimore County Police arrested 5 people connected to and this is a capitalized South American theft group responsible for multiple break-ins throughout Maryland and other states. And the break-ins happened in Reisterstown. Millionaire neighborhoods are being broken into.
Mm.
So the group targets large homes in wealthy areas and often Asian business owners. They travel around the country committing thefts and burglaries, and then they leave the area before they can be identified. Investigators also connect the 5 suspects to burglaries in North Carolina, Alabama, and Oklahoma. Cell phone data reveals one of the suspects Googled millionaire neighborhoods in various cities and the addresses of large homes. So this definitely caused a panic in this like sleepy millionaire suburban neighborhood. I was like, there's no way they call themselves the South American Theft Group. There's no way that's a real name. And so I Googled it, and it's not exactly like a conglomerate like crime organization or anything like that. It's just a phenomenon of, I guess they could call it Chilean tourist burglars. It's not so organized as they are trying to make it seem. And it's
Yeah.
not like they are all like in cahoots with each other as they like travel to various cities in the United States. And I think things like this are ultimately what make people think that there are sinister forces that we need to stop from entering here. I
Hmm.
think this is also really misinformed because no one in Chile is like us South Americans.
Yeah.
um so I just thought it was interesting that that's how it was reported. That's not the only article that uses that term, but yeah, how bizarre.
That's,
I don't agree with people breaking into homes and stealing things.
yeah.
Point blank, sure. But I do also think that why would anyone travel internationally to steal things if things were just fine where they were?
Thank.
A lot of times, the reason things aren't fine is because of us.
Yeah.
Like the amount
Yeah.
of countries that we've intervened in and like um everything that we've gotten our hands on has been bloodied. And I think it's time that we, recognize that. It's not a matter of like we hate America or we love America. It's a matter of let's clean up our own fucking messes as what we claim to be a global power.
Yeah. It's like you only ever want to support a foreign intervention if it serves your purposes. It's like, oh, we'll give you aid. Oh, you're turning into a government that we don't agree with? Yeah, we can't give you aid for that. Like, it's not an investment, right? Like, they're people. There is a lot of strife that we've caused because we sort of have this expectation that the world should only work in a way we understand.
Yeah, and not acknowledging how limited our understanding really is
Yeah.
also part of it. Just like having the same colonizer mentality of we know what is best for you.
Hmm.
Um
Yes. I would even say that's a patriarchal concept, Lucia. Like, that news article, what does it not do if construct fear? And it's something that I've noticed. Like, a lot of stuff is built so that we're afraid of it, or there is something to be feared about it. There's something to be feared of difference. And it's like, so what if somebody thinks differently from you? That doesn't automatically mean that it's dangerous to you. It just means that
I
it's
think
different.
I think it's also kind of funny that they included that detail about the suspect googling millionaire homes in cities. Because now there are millionaires with millionaire like type homes who are feeling targeted It's a
Mm-hmm.
moral panic. It's a moment of rallying the neighborhood and taking a stand, and it's like it's not actually that big of a force that you have to worry about necessarily. Like it's not a whole actual organized crime group that coordinates together. It's not like that. Like get a good security system, invest in the community so there's less likelihood of people needing to do things like this and do what you can. But like I think it's hilarious how people assume that crime can't happen in certain places.
Yeah.
And they certainly can. If anything, there might be more targeted crime where there's money. So having poverty, having crime in any area around you is detrimental to everyone. Yeah, so it's very bizarre how we have this cutoff of like Baltimore City and Baltimore County, where it's like Baltimore City is just crime ridden, dirty, and then Baltimore County is like we have malls, I guess. And there's also this like animosity between those two entities. I see this play out with students. There's like an accusation of like if your school was in the county before you came to this school in the city, then you're not actually black. You have no understanding of the black experience. Now, on the other end, there's a definitely a looking down upon kids who come from schools from the cities. It's very bizarre, but the way we divide in that way is just so silly. It's like we are adjacent. So what happens here does affect what happens in the county
Yeah.
and vice versa.
It kind of reminds me of the fact that, like, the concept of Earth not being the center of the universe was controversial, and why it was controversial is something that we forget, right? Like, it's something where we never ask, something that we habitually don't do, that sort of gets broken of us from our education, from our society, is we don't ask the question why. And it's like the reason why Earth not being the center of the universe was controversial is it meant that, or it means philosophically that, like, the issues and problems that we might have, or the reality of Earth is not the sum total of reality, right? Like, if you live in if you're in a county school, the center of the universe is your experience, and everything adjacent to it, everything apart from it, that's something else. That's not normal. That's not good. That's not what reality is supposed to be. And if you're in the city, it's the same thing. It's like, oh, you haven't had the black experience.
You're not
You
real
don't know.
like
You're
me.
not real. Exactly. Like, you're not a part of reality. I'm living reality. You're not living reality. And it's like, well, if neither one of us is the center of the universe, then all we have are different existences, different realities. And perhaps they can come together or diverge, but it doesn't really matter because neither one of us is better or worse than the other. We're just living differently.
Yeah.
And and it's something that I think I wish people asked why more often. I don't know if I sent you that video Anna Akana put out. She's actually done two videos that I can think of that just sort of address, like, the state of gendered relationships between heteronormative groups. So a cisgendered heteronormative man and woman, the potential tension in potential relationships. It comes from someplace. And, like, there's been some recent studies into it. Everyone is easily going to get hung up on, oh, a bunch of different universities did a comprehensive study, and it turns out that everything that we expect men and women to do in relationships with each other and how they evaluate relationships is scientifically true. You do all this studying, you do all this science, objective, or as objective as we can be science, to determine, like, what actually goes into it. And it's like, yes, we can scientifically prove now that, a man with money and living a certain kind of life is more attractive, and that, women are evaluated on these measurements and these bases, and this is how it impacts people's relationships and their psychology. And it's like, you do all of that, and no one has asked the question of why. I think I sent you a video that she had about some research they did that found that men, there's like a negative psychological impact of a man being in a relationship with a more successful woman. And it's been shown across all of these different segments within the Western world. It's not even just America. I think part of the study was also in like one of the Nordic countries. And they found that it was like if a woman is making more than her man, it impacts his self esteem in a very profound way, in a profound and measurable way. And it seems to be, and there's not a cap. So if you're like Jay-Z and Beyonce is more successful than you, it like has a tangible, measurable impact on your brain, on your self-assessment. And it's like
Little
it was
man syndrome.
yeah, and it was like, okay, so we see that this is here. What do we glean from this science? Do we glean that this is the state of affairs and that in order to have a happy, healthy relationship, that a relationship between a cisgendered man and a cisgendered woman in a heteronormative relationship, the best way to remove a major instability is to make sure she's never at his level or above. She's always below him. And it's like, that philosophically doesn't make sense, but it only works that way if you assume that what you've measured is the state of human beings in the most raw and natural way. If you ask the question, well, why is it that so many men feel this way? When you start to ask, why is this the state of affairs? Why is this something we can measure? And why is this the measurement? You start getting into more complex questions. I mean, this is a social science, and social sciences, I think, have the unique ability of you blend hard science, which is measuring stuff, and asking the question of, well, how do you actually impact it? She made another video about like a Wall Street Journal. Was it Wall Street Journal? Or was it the Washington Post? I think it was the Washington Post, an article that they had published with all this information that basically says the way relationships between men and women work exactly the way we think it does. And it's like, well, why? Why is it that this is how this works? Why is it that dudes feel self-conscious and they feel lesser when they're with a partner and she is more successful than him in any of these number of ways that, that we've got measured and stuff? Because I think the answer of as to why this is how dudes are feeling, why this is happening, why this is the state of affairs is far more important than what's actually happening. Why would a man feel some kind of way about, his wife or his girlfriend or his partner being more successful? What does her success have to do with who he is? If the roles are reversed, many a woman is like, well, I know I had a part to play in like at least his internal self-regulation. So his success is in part my success. It's our success. She doesn't feel bad about him being successful or not. But why is it when you reverse it that he does feel bad, even if he says he doesn't? Right? Even if he doesn't do anything negative, even if he continues to try to have a healthy relationship, there's still that thing in the back of his mind weighing him down. If we asked ourselves why to more questions, I think we would probably have a better time. Because at least when it comes to like Baltimore, when it comes to the experience of those students between the county and the city, or even just being in a classroom with ESL students.
Mm.
I'm going to sound like my mom because this is exactly something she would say. She's old school. She's an old school teacher. And she loves shutting down bullies because she's like, dude, you can't even read. You can't bully me. You can't read. And it's like,
Yeah.
why are you in a classroom where you are there because you can't read good, making fun of or othering or putting someone else down because functionally they're your equals? You're all in the same boat together. It's just the reason they're here is because they speak another language. You don't even have that. You speak one language. They speak a whole other language. You guys should be trying to hitch up and work together because odds are they'll be out of here before you. If the trend continues, they just got to learn English. You've been speaking it. And it's like, that's a very 20th century attitude, a very old
Yeah,
school
but
way of being.
I do actually really appreciate old school teachers, and I think there is a reason they've made it to being old school. You know what I mean? Like there's a
Yeah.
reason And some of those reasons are bad and some of them are good. And that I think is depending on the students and the environment. I think that's a good thing. Um, I think sometimes that's what kids need, like a really frank reality check.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've definitely done that to students as well, where sometimes what they need is to be called out. Of course, that only happens when you know the kid and you're able to like gauge their situation and whether it would be productive to call them out. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that people actually don't get, like new teachers don't understand. They see old school teachers being harsh and like clapping back and they think they can jump right into it. And it's like, no, you gotta know the kids first. You can't just crush self-esteem.
Yeah. You can't just break their little spirits.
Yeah, yeah, that's one thing that I do actually stand by with old school teachers that I think is effective, like a little bit of a reality check.
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
I think we need to across the board encourage students of all ages to ask the question why. It's my favorite question
mm-hmm.
because there is no end.
Right.
Wherever you start, you can keep going.
Infinite.
And it's like the reason why I think, especially parents and people and adults don't like it and try to break children of asking it, is because you get to the point where you have to say, well, actually, I don't know why. I have
Right.
no idea. That isn't as terrifying for like Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's comfortable with his children asking why and him being like, well, you know what? Not only do I not know why, the reason why I don't know why is because nobody knows why. He's smart enough to be able to be like, if there's a situation where I reach that, I can, number one, teach my child where to go to find the answer. And number two, at the very least, I can let them know, hey, sometimes you're going to ask why and nobody has the answer.
Yeah.
And that's a space for you to do research. That's why we do science. You can find the answer why.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I wish it was something because I feel like if those students in the class asked, well, like, why is it that these ESL kids are the way that they are? What actually makes them do the things they do? It removes the possibility of you not exercising empathy because eventually you'll get to the point where you're like, I understand, or at least at the very least, I'm beginning to understand that you are a human being who is experiencing something that either I can relate to or I can't relate to. And because I can't relate to it, because I don't know what it's like to
Yeah.
be a functional refugee of the strife of something that's been going on for 200 years. Because I don't understand that, I feel for you. A lot of people, especially because I know you've said before that a lot of your students have been like, oh, there's not really any racism. Like, I don't feel like I've been pressured racially for one reason or another. No one's been racist to me.
Right.
And it's like, how you define racism is one of the reasons why you say that, what you constitute and consider racism. But also, you can definitively say that people related to you in the past definitely felt racism and had a history of oppression and racism on them. You can say, I am the descendant of enslaved people who were either pushed into Maryland, into Baltimore historically because of that racism, or settled in it. You can understand to some extent a refugee from a Latin American country where there's violence. You can understand that there were people in the American South that you're related to, formerly enslaved people who were killed and ostracized and imprisoned for, you know, for nonsensical reasons. So if you can't understand why the Salvadorian Civil War happened, if you can't understand why the situation has been in Mexico or Salvador or Chile or Venezuela, all of these different places, you can at least understand that there's a possibility that the people who left it don't understand it either.
Yeah.
And all of that comes from you asking why to everything you encounter with them
Yeah.
and sticking with it.
I gotta say though, there's a very strong enforcement of discouraging students from asking why a little too much. Just from existing in the community, it can happen because there are some things where you want to leave that rock unturned. You don't actually want to know what's going on in that house. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also in a different way, like if you go to school and you start asking why, some teachers are less receptive or, in their own survival mode,
Yeah.
and can shut it down. But in a larger scale, when you start asking why does this school have air conditioning and that school doesn't? Then you start looking up in the rank of authority figures and realizing the corruption.
Mm-hmm.
Corruption, the incompetence, the inefficiencies, and there is no other why than these people are choosing to be selfish over anything else. And at that point, like, it is a huge rock to turn over and find out the why of. I think another thing to consider in addition to why, like if you're presented with the fact that men do feel a type of way when women are just economically, financially more successful than them, um, what's your response to that? How will you respond to that statistic or to that research that says that is a thing that occurs? If you are a woman, will you be like, see, men are so like, um, men
Fragile.
are so fragile. Exactly. Men are really this fragile. As a man, you might be like, well, women really are like that gold digging. Or even some men who are like, well, that means that I need to improve myself and earn lots of money. And like, there's many ways it can go, and there's many ways it can become unhealthy.
Yes.
Um, but I think if your response to hearing that, and you're a man, is I need to check myself if I ever encounter myself in a situation like that. I just need to be aware, like, am I doing that? Am I acting out based on those feelings and thoughts?
Yeah.
That's a great way to respond to that, but that is not actually what happens. I think there's different levels of things happening where we, first of all, don't understand research and facts and what is being
Mm-hmm.
said.
Yes.
Um, And then secondly, we don't investigate further. We just take it as is. And then thirdly, like, how will that apply to your life? How will you inform your experiences based on that?
That's why I love the
That's
question of why.
many
Yeah.
points where it can go wrong, but many
Yeah.
points where it can go right.
It's definitely a situation where my personal comfort with asking the question why and digesting what comes of it is definitely something um, that colors my experience. You're right. Like, is it going to cause me to feel some kind of way if I'm in the situation? And if I ask myself why, what am I actually feeling? Why am I feeling it? What should I be doing in response to this feeling? It's like being in that situation where it's like, oh, my partner, she's more successful than me. I'm still going to support her and do everything I can to support because I want her to be successful consciously. But why do I feel this way? What is it about me that I have to behind my eyes constantly say, keep supporting her. Don't allow the discomfort or the sadness or the hit to your self-confidence impact what you're doing, or worst of all, impact her. What's causing it? And like, that line of thought, that drive to ask that question is not something everybody has. Most people, I would say, don't have that. And if they did have it, it got removed from them at early childhood, right?
Yeah.
Um, but the reason why I think we should all have that is because it can be corrected. Like, if I encounter this information and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. I need to figure this out. Hey, babe, we need to take a break because I'm feeling some kind of way and I don't know why I'm feeling it and I can't figure it out, but it hurts me and I need to take a break. So I'm gonna pack a bag and just kind of go off somewhere and figure myself out. that can be startling and hurtful to her, because here she is just living life, having a great relationship. And then all of a sudden her spouse or husband or boyfriend is like, I can't be around you. I don't know why. I love you, but I need to bounce.
Yeah.
That is, that's emotionally traumatic in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
That hurts. But growth hurts, right? Like people forget puberty hurts when you're in that state of growth. It's uncomfortable, but you come out the other end. If you don't try to stop it and you try to promote it in as healthy way as possible, you come out the other end better. And so
Yeah.
it's like, yes, he definitely hurt your feelings saying something that just came out of the blue, but he's also trying to overcome something that is that exists, and he doesn't understand why. And that it's less he hurt you because he's just a fragile man, but he hurt you because he's trying to remove a fragility that he can't consciously reconcile. What's going on in the back portion of my brain to make me feel this way, even though I love this woman and I want her to be successful and I want all of this?
Yeah.
You know, it's the same thing. Like, I'm in this classroom with these people who are my functional equals. What is driving me to feel so upset and so othered that I need to put them down? Why do I think that their place is below me? They read English as well as I do, and I've been speaking it my whole life. So am I really mad at them, or am I mad at myself? Am I really sad about them, or am I sad about myself? What about the world and me and our interaction is causing me to want to do this or act this way? And that kind of self-reflection is not normal.
Yeah.
It is not commonplace.
Right.
But
But
I still think it's good.
it's good, and if you have the bandwidth, if you're not like currently in survival mode, it
Yeah.
can still be hard to do. Ultimately, we can talk about all these factors and statistics that say who is more likely to do what. There is such thing as agency, and agency comes from self-reflection. I think that when you become an adult, you have to start being accountable like pretty quickly for the things that you do or don't do. There are things that are extremely unfair that aren't in my control,
Mm-hmm.
but the things that I can do, my free will, my agency, it comes from learning, it comes from growing and feeding that part of my brain. It comes from self reflecting. And that's the tool that you will ultimately use to make decisions.
Thank you, listeners. Don't forget that we are out here for love. And let us know what's bothering you. You know, let us know what's bothering you, Baltimore. Maybe we can address it next time, or just talk on it, or listen. Right? So send us an email at what's.wrong.bmore@gmail.com, or DM us on our socials, which can be found at what's.wrong.bmore. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to the Patreon so you can get all of the fun bloopers and extra tidbit.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Peace out.